Alright, so again, if you want to read through example B and example C in your books to kind of get an idea of how to graph, a sine function when we have a change to B, which would be a horizontal stretch or shrink. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just show you a couple examples. So the first thing we're going to do is to try these B, C, letter A. So if I look at A, right, I've got a period now of 2 pi over B. And so this period would just be pi. So that means this is going to make 2 complete cycles from 0 to 2 pi. It's going to repeat every pi. Its amplitude is 1. Its midline is still y equals 0. So when I graph that, I'm going to take my parent, all my quadrantal angles, and what I'm going to do is anything inside with x would affect x when we manipulate, stretch, shrink, reflect. In x, you always do the opposite. So if this was like x plus 2, we would subtract 2. So since this is 2 times x, we're actually going to divide all these x's by 2. So we've got 0. Pi over 2 divided by 2, you're actually going to multiply that 2 and 2 to get 4. This one stays pi over 2. Again, a fraction within a fraction, you can actually multiply the denominators. Or multiply by the reciprocal, which would be the same thing. Here, 2 pi divided by 2 is just pi. Alright, so I'm dividing all those original x's by 2. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to graph it. Alright, so now I've got these new x coordinates. This is pi over 4 now. Pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. And then 4 marks is pi, so I could do 1, 2, 3, 4. That would be where 2 pi would hit. So just for reference, we'll kind of draw a regular sine graph and this new one. Our amplitude isn't changed, so we're still going up 1, down 1. And I'm going to go ahead and just plot my points. I've got 0, 0, pi over 4, 1, pi over 2, 0, 3 pi over 4, negative 1, pi, 0. So that's our new function, sine of 2x. The parent graph would have been starting at 0, 0. It hits 1 at pi over 2. It goes back to 0 at pi. It would go down to negative 1 halfway between, and back to 0 at 2 pi. So just for reference again, this new graph is actually completing 2 cycles. As if I wanted to keep going, I could go continuing this pattern up, midline, down, midline. Just to show those 2 cycles in the time that it took regular sine to do 1. Alright. So for B, we now have a 1/2 out in front. So what that's going to do is it's going to make our period 2 pi divided by 1/2. So when you divide by a fraction, multiply by that reciprocal. So we get 4 pi. That amplitude is still 1. Midline is still y equals 0. So when we look at this, we're going to take that parent, or 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. And then we're going to divide all those x's by 1/2. So again, dividing by 1/2 is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal or doubling it. So I would always like to do that when I have fractions, is, multiply by that reciprocal, double. Doubling's a lot easier here. So pi over 2 times 2 is just 1 pi. Pi times 2 is 2 pi. 3 pi over 2 times 2 would technically be 6 pi over 2, which would reduce to 3 pi. And then 2 times 2 is going to give us a 4 pi. And then my y values are just staying the same, the 0, 1, 0, negative 1, 0. So when we go to graph those, and I've got those 4 key marks there, I've got my, zero's already there. That's going to start off as pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, going up 1, down 1. So we've got 0, 0, pi 1, 2 pi 0, 3 pi negative 1, 4 pi 0. Let's erase that extra dot because that's just a typo. Alright, so here's, I'm erasing everything. Sorry guys. Draw. Give me a marker back. Okay. So here is our graph for the sine of 1/2 x. And again, for reference, I'm just going to show you where that original sine graph would have been. 0, 0, pi over 2, 1, pi 0, 3 pi over 2, negative 1, pi 0. So this blue line completed only half of a cycle from 0 to 2 pi. So that's what that 1/2 is signifying. Alright. And the last one is kind of tricky. They're asking you, hey, what would the equation be if the function had a period of pi over 3, amplitude of 1, and a midline of 0? So we know amplitude's 1, midline 0. So really we're trying to figure out, well, what's b? I know 2 pi over b is equal to my period. So what I can do is cross multiply to figure out and solve what b would be. So I've got 3 times 2 gives me 6 pi, b times pi, and then we can divide those pi's out. So we get b would be 6. This would be 6x. Alright, so hopefully you guys are doing okay with this. So now I want you guys to try out the check your understanding. Again, draw it in on the page so I can see what you guys are at. And then on the next slide you guys will see